Sure.
No. I feel like this looks really amazing.
Thank you.
Like this is gonna be.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I was afraid it would be like I think it was my 12th birthday party when I had my birthday over spring break, and we had a party and nobody came because everybody was gone on spring break.
It won't be this is good. No, I think the show looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Some of your best work.
Thank you. And you hung it so beautifully. Really. Yeah.
Awesome. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the live stream virtual opening of Lesley Frenz's exhibition, Palace of Nowhere. I'm Judith Rinehart, the owner of the J. Rinehart Gallery here in Seattle, and this is Lesley Frenz.
Hi.
So we are going to talk today about her exhibition, about her influences, about everything that came together making this exhibition possible in the strange times that we're in. So first, we'll just say thank you again for joining us. Feel free to start putting any questions you may have in the chat. If you're on YouTube, if you're not on YouTube, go to YouTube and sign up so you can put your questions in the chat. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll still continue to do these kind of artist conversations and virtual live stream events, even post-pandemic, which is feeling
so close.
So close.
Just around the corner.
Just around the corner. But please let us know. We'd love to stay engaged with you and love to hear what it is that you want to see from the gallery in the future. You can always visit us online at jrinhartgallery.com. The gallery is open Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. You're welcome to come by, shoot me an email to make an appointment if you'd rather. Either way, we'd love to share art with you virtually and in real life. So thank you again. And with that, let's just dive right in.
Okay, let's dive in.
Lesley, so we met like a very long time ago.
Very long time ago. 8 years almost.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Maybe we shouldn't have said that.
So we met a really long time ago, and I had kind of known that you were an artist, and I had followed your art blog, The Arts of Forager, and just kind of loved you, the way you thought about artwork, the way you thought about moving through life and moving through the environment. And all of this to say that from when I met you till now, oh my gosh, you have, like, even in this past year with this body of work, you have just leaps and bounds.
Thank you.
This show, I mean, sorry, I'm gushing, but the show is just absolutely...
No, please gush.
Yeah, please. The show is just absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
So when we first met, you were kind of in the midst of this traveling all over the U.S. You were here for a hot minute, and then you were gone, and now you're back.
Yes. Permanently back.
Permanently back.
As much as we'll ever be permanently anywhere.
So I want to know, just to kick off the conversation, especially with this show and kind of the context of where we're at now, how did you end up in the Northwest?
Well, as you know, we were traveling all over the West, mainly California, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and we kept coming back to Washington. It felt like we kept getting pulled back here, and we probably spent, I think it was about our last 2 years of traveling. My husband was getting contracts here in Washington, so we're like, well, maybe this is where we're supposed to be. And he ended up transitioning from therapy to nursing and got a job in Everett, and we're like, well, we like it here, so we'll stay, and we liked the fact that we would be close to Seattle, within spitting distance of Seattle, and our favorite hiking is here in the North Cascades. So yeah, we just bit the bullet and bought a place in Mount Vernon, and now we're Washingtonians. Almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
It feels like longer.
It does.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
And so with a lot of your previous work, and I see it in this work too, you're very much inspired by the places that you've been. You're inspired by the places you're going. Can you tell us about the experience of, finally finding your home, your place where you're going to be, and then exploring that environment, and how does that tie into this body of work? It's a very long leading question.
It's a very long leading question. We always wanted to be, we knew we wanted to be close to mountains. We had a complete stranger tell us that we were mountain people at one point. So we're like, that kind of stuck. So we knew we wanted to be close to mountains, but being originally both Florida people, we also wanted to be close to the salt water. So we're kind of drawn almost equally to both. So finding ourselves in this Puget Sound area really made a lot of sense. And both of those two landscapes really call to me. This body of work concentrates more on mountains, but then sometimes I'll flip, and a lot of times it's in the summer when I'm spending maybe more time near the Sound or out on the peninsula closer to the ocean, then that landscape will resonate a little more. But yeah, so just like I'm constantly absorbing what's around me, and then it's just coming out when I'm painting.
Beautifully, too.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have the exhibition catalog. Available on the gallery website. They're print on demand, and then you can also check it out digitally. But we have a fantastic essay about this show by Sarah Scher, who's an amazing writer.
So beautifully written.
And the one thing that you mentioned in your artist statement, she comes back to, that we just ended up putting as a quote, this quote from Chang Tzu. It says, "Come with me to the palace of nowhere, where many things are one." What drew you to that quote, and how does it relate to the work?
So it's kind of a roundabout way that came to be the title of the show. I was thinking about, my initial thoughts for the show was that I wanted to create a body of work that felt very calm and still and peaceful. I mean, that's usually my MO for my work to begin with. That's just what comes out. But I really, especially in this year that we were in, 2020, where I wanted some calm, I wanted some stillness, and it really, the bulk of the work came together. I started it before the election, but the bulk of it came together and was finished after, and I feel like that sigh of relief kind of came out. So I wanted it to feel calm, but I also wanted to kind of riff on this idea of the wilderness as sanctuary, the wilderness as a place of communion, as a place of worship, as a place of union with yourself and with God, if you will, with nature, with the earth that we come from. So the Palace of Nowhere is a quote from a Chinese Taoist philosopher, but it's also a quote that mystic Thomas Merton really thought a lot of. And I was reading a book about Thomas Merton, and so this quote came up, and I just kind of held on to that idea, this palace of nowhere, and being in a place that's nowhere. Like, how can you really be nowhere if it's a whole kind of existential sort of thought, but I thought it was a really interesting play on words, and something interesting to play with visually when you think about mountains as palaces and as these grandiose monumental things, but then being lost in the mountains and being nowhere. So it was kind of the...
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, did you find yourself throughout all of pandemic times just going out to the mountains?
As much as we could, yeah, and as safe as we felt to, yeah. It was very difficult to stay home in March and April, because those are usually like we're kind of getting our hiking feet back under us after winter, and so We didn't really start getting out until about May or June, but then once we did, we tried to get out as much as we could.
And you felt like you could do it safely and distance?
Yeah, it actually, it made us go places that we wouldn't normally have gone. So we were going across the pass into Okanagan National Forest and that area over there, whereas without the pandemic, we probably would have not ventured that far, because that's quite a hike from Mount Vernon, but yeah.
So one of the questions that we had earlier was about where these places are. Specifically, Matthew had asked about these mountain lakes, because he said, I feel like I've been to this lake. Where is this lake? And so it's interesting that you're saying you've been going to all these different places, and the idea of being, lost in the mountains, being nowhere. So begs the question, where are these places?
They are nowhere. Literally. I don't paint from specific reference. I started out doing that when I was painting landscapes 4 or 5 years ago, but I got bored of that very quickly. And so these are all just conglomerations of places I've been. So it makes sense that it would resonate and remind someone of a lake here in the Northwest, because I've been to lakes,
Right.
That's what I'm seeing, and so that's what's coming out. But it could also remind someone of a similar lake in Colorado,
right.
or California. This one over here reminds me a lot of the California coast.
We'll get a lot of that.
Yeah, we'll get a look at that later. So yeah, they're just they are what comes out when I begin to paint a landscape.
And are you drawing from just memory, or are you looking at past photos, or are you thinking of just your feelings?
All of the above. All of the above. I take a lot of pictures when we hike, and I do use them not for direct reference, but I will use them for inspirational reference. I'll just quickly scroll through my pictures before I start to paint, especially if I'm like, I'd like to paint something that kind of feels like this hike that we took, or that kind of reminds me of that hike, but it won't necessarily be a direct reference to that. And the finished painting more than likely won't even come out the way that I started it, because they just kind of evolve as they go.
I feel like there's something very intuitive about painting that way.
It's a very intuitive process. So I very rarely start out with an image in my head of what it's going to look like when it's finished. I just find it very difficult to work that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at a few more pieces in the show.
Okay.
And once again, feel free to pop in questions in the chat whenever. We'll kind of answer them as we go. If there's something fun, or we'll definitely have a Q&A at the end. We'll be happy to pop in and answer whatever questions you have. And if I'm not asking the right questions, tell me what to ask, and I'll do it. Awesome. Let's go check this out.
Okay.
So we had a visitor earlier today say that a lot of the pieces remind him of Alaska.
I've had that. I've gotten that before. Yeah.
But then it's also mountains.
Mountains.
Yeah.
Snow-covered mountains.
Snow-covered mountains. So in addition to the acrylic paintings, we have this fantastic series. Like, they look like they could be studies, but I don't see them as studies. I feel like they're very specific works. They're this little watercolor on paper that kind of have a different feel than a lot of kind of the mountainous ranges. Can you talk a little bit about this series?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started doing watercolors in 2016. I had never really worked in watercolor before, other than elementary school type of watercolors. And it eventually led me, maybe 2 years later, I started painting watercolor trees, and I haven't been able to stop. And it kind of came about from our hiking and from when we're driving to hikes. A lot of times when we're driving to hikes, we're going down forest roads, and so I'm seeing a lot of forest next to me, and I'm snapping pictures as we're driving. So a lot of them will have that kind of emotion feel, which I really appreciate. And then with this specific body of work, I was thinking about trees and forests as doorways. So a lot of times on mountain hikes, if you're getting to a mountain lake, you have to go up through a forest first. So your first mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles, depends on the hike, you're just kind of walking through the forest. And so I see the forest kind of as the vestibule leading you to those big wide open spaces and those mountain vistas and alpine lakes.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I love that this whole series is called Doorway to Nowhere. And so are you thinking of just that whole journey process of getting to the end of the hike, or just the whole journey process of getting to nowhere? Getting to nowhere.
Getting to nowhere, really. A lot of times, you know, when we start out a hike, we're usually coming off of, we've been working, our minds are elsewhere, you know, we've just driven 2 hours to get there through some traffic. So it takes a while to kind of come down from all of that and get your mind into just what you're doing and just where you're hiking. I've read before, people doing through hikes, it takes a full 72 hours before you calm down enough where you're really getting lost in the hiking. So on a day hike, which is what we usually do, we do some backpacking too, but it's usually more that length of forest. You get about 1.5 miles to 2 miles into the forest, and that's when you start to get into that getting your mind lost and getting kind of into that mindset where everything's falling away, and you know that you're on your way to no place.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to think about work or your day-to-day or the laundry or your to-do list or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, the to-do list. I've always loved your watercolor work, especially they always feel to me like that moment that you're walking through a trail and then you look up.
Yes.
Like that's what they remind me of.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways of just you're surrounded, and then you look up and you see like the sky's almost white, or brighter, maybe it's a slightly overcast day, and so all the colors just kind of come out.
Yeah.
So I love this escapism.
I'm all about the escapism.
Right. Another thing we should take a look at a few more pieces,
okay.
And then I wanted to ask you about a particular incident that you had mentioned in your statement involving the show. So let's take a spin around, and we'll follow up on that.
Okay. Are you fine? Is this? Is that good?
Oh, somebody also said that this looks like rain here. And I went, oh my God, it does.
I could see that.
And that too.
Yeah. Baker, Rainier.
All the volcanic mountains all around.
Yep.
Yay! I love this shot because we're gonna talk about this. So part of the thing that you talked about in your statement was a moment where you got lost. And
Yes.
you were on a hike, and the fog rolled in, and you did not know where you were.
Literally. Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, we had we knew we were in the North Cascades.
When did this happen? And
where
did you, how?
So
tell the story.
I'll tell you the story. So this was September, kind of late September backpack that we did in the North Cascades. Up on Ptarmigan Ridge is the backpack. So we were just an overnight backpack, no big deal. We had hiked this hike before, but we ended up camping above a lake, this hidden lake that you can only see at certain times of the year, and it was gorgeous. We had this beautiful night, but then the rain started in the middle of the night and did not stop until we were hiking out finally after getting lost. And it was raining and the fog was just, we could barely see maybe 30, 40 feet ahead. And instead of hiking back the way we came in, which is what we should have done, we decided, well, we'll just hike up to the ridge and then we'll catch the trail from there. So we did that, but unbeknownst to us, we hiked up and then down a little. And we ended up on the opposite side of the ridge in a deep bowl, completely turned around once we got into that bowl. And we kept trying to hike down to the lake, but as we were trying to hike down this way, we were actually hiking down this way, which was a very steep drop off that we didn't realize. So it was very disorienting, and one of the few times we've ever been a little worried about our safety while we're hiking. But you know, at some point we were just like, okay, we need to just be still for a minute. Let's drop a GPS point, which we hadn't done before. And let's just kind of wait and see if the fog burns off. And so in that point of stillness, the fog finally burned off and we were able to find our way out. And we had to kind of let ourselves get lost and let ourselves kind of take that futile effort of, we can do this, we can find our way out, and then just, okay, let's just take that breath. And once we did that, then we found our way out and we were able to hike out and it was fine. So I was thinking about that a lot, and for some reason it just kept coming back to me and coming back to me. And so when I was thinking about this show, I was like, yeah, so we were nowhere. We didn't know where we were exactly. We were in that, I say that point of nothingness, and that's kind of what it felt like, where we just kind of, all we could see was fog and rock.
My goodness.
Yeah. So
I think when you found your way out, there must have been just this.
Oh my God. Yes, there was. I mean, we were prepared. We had a water purifier. We had our tent. We would have been fine until the weather cleared. But it was a little scary.
Yeah. Nature is there.
It definitely.
It's worthy of being respected.
Respect. Yeah. Definitely respect it. Yeah, for sure.
So one thing that people have asked about your work before is, in addition to, well, where is this? Like, there's this weather element where there is this softness, there is this I feel like it's changed throughout your work, but it's been this common thread of like, this could be a foggy day, this could be it's twilight, or the sun is just rising, or you're looking at different parts of maybe the same space but in different light and different, like, you're experiencing nature in very different ways through different paintings.
Yeah.
Are you feeling that that's something that's coming out because of you're pulling from all of these things, or is something you thought about at all?
Yes, I do think so, and I think a lot of that comes from being here in the Northwest, where 80% of the time the skies are very creamy and cloudy and dense and heavy, almost like you could just like ice cream, you could scoop it up, you know, and so that's kind of what I always like my skies to feel like, because I think those skies are so delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a sunny day, don't get me wrong. I love a sunny day in the Northwest, but to paint, I think anyone can paint a sunny day. Like I feel like the creamy, cloudy skies are a lot more interesting and moody, and a lot more of a more interesting atmosphere to capture.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And you do it so well. I want to see you had a piece, an older piece that was called Ice Cream Castles.
Yes.
If you want to scoop that up. So let's just awkwardly transition to talk about the strip.
Okay. Here it is.
So this piece, I think, is when we first talked about the exhibition, you said, I want to do this almost like an altar piece.
Yes.
We've been talking a lot about respecting nature and feeling it as this place you go to release, this place you go to find stillness. And you had touched on thinking of it as a place of sanctuary, a place of worship, a place of finding yourself or God or whatever.
Right.
And so I was thrilled with how this came out.
Me too. Me too. I'm glad it worked out the way I saw it in my head.
So could you give us some background about, and this is probably one of the first tall vertical pieces I've ever seen you do. So give us a little background about where this concept came from and then how this worked out for you.
It's really funny because I was looking back on some old work this past week, and I had a very small series of paintings that I did at the end of my time in college, where I was painting this type of window looking out into a landscape. So I'm like, holy, I have been thinking about this for a really long time. So, it kind of, this idea of an altar piece, it ties in with that idea of wilderness as sanctuary, as place of worship. And it's not even wilderness necessarily. I mean, this could be a cropped view of what you can see from downtown Seattle, really. I mean, you can see these types of mountains from just downtown. And the watercolor trees could be your backyard view. So I think there's something really important to think about, where it's not just going out into the wilderness where you can find that peace and communion, but you can find it within your home, within yourself, within your relationships. It's a part of you. It doesn't have to be out there. It's also in here. So that was that's pretty much.
I love it. Yeah. So you mentioned looking at it as a window, and I was asked earlier about kind of the use of line in your work, and I meant to bring this up earlier. This works out. I've always seen your kind of use of line as just adding this extra layer of attention to your work, and taking something that could be seen as almost a traditional landscape, and kind of pushing it into a more modern realm. But with this show, it feels like there's I feel like I'd seen them using them as horizon lines, or just kind of as a demarcation of something. Yeah. But this show is the first time I've seen you do kind of horizontal and vertical lines. Yes. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And you mentioned window, which makes me go, oh, is it like looking through a window?
It is like looking through a window. So when I was thinking about, because I was debating whether or not I wanted to continue that use of line in these pieces, and then once I decided, yes, I need that tension, then I had the thought of, well, you're looking out into a landscape, so what if they looked a little like windows? But I didn't want it to feel so literal and like, here's a view of a landscape from a window. So I've made the perspective a little skewed. So maybe you're just seeing the bottom half of a tall window, like this piece, or maybe you're just seeing a cropped view and you don't even see the vertical parts of the window or the horizontal parts, or maybe it's even slightly off center. So the perspective is a little off. And I liked the idea of the window giving the landscapes a sense of destination and demarcation. So it's out there, but you're in here.
Which also feels very poignant
from the past year, which I hadn't even thought of until someone brought it up, and I'm like, oh, well, I have been looking out of a lot of windows lately, so that could be. Yeah, so there's that too. That gives it just another layer of tension.
Yeah, and I feel like there's this, it draws you in. If something is just a thin white line over a painting, just it draws you right in. It's really fabulous. Well, I'll ask, do we have any questions in the chat?
We've got a few comments.
Oh, great. What are some comments?
We've got some hellos from North Carolina, Jacksonville, Everett. Chris S. says, I get lost in Lesley's acrylics work. Depending on my mood, it's a new journey.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Veronica and Michael James say that they're just beautiful and inspiring pieces. Really enjoying the live chat and descriptions.
Thanks, guys.
Chris S. says, place of encounter piece is beautiful. And so do Veronica and Michael James.
Thanks, guys. Well, I have a question.
Okay.
What's next? Which is such a horrible question because it's like, hey, you just finished the whole body work. Now, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, we have some commissions coming up, which I'm excited to start on. I have a few watercolors I'm working on for a show in North Carolina, and then after that, I'm going to take some time to really explore, see what comes out, see how I can evolve this body of work, because as you know, I'm never satisfied with with what I've done and where I am. So I'm going to take some time to explore and maybe even try my hand at a little sculpture.
Ooh,
so I'm excited.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Are there any hikes that you would recommend for people? They should go on.
Oh my gosh. Well, that Ptarmigan Ridge hike is an amazing hike. Don't get lost like we did. It's a really beautiful hike, and you can really only access the full hike like late August, September, because there tends to be a lot of snow. But you get a lot of view for not a lot of work. It's only, I think, 1,100 foot elevation gain. So that's one of our favorite hikes, and we've discovered the Okanagan National Forest on the other side of the North Cascade Pass recently, and we've just fallen in love up there. So, but I'm not going to tell you my favorites there because we want to keep it a secret.
We look forward to seeing what else gets stuck in your memory and ends
Thank you.
On canvas or panel. Any other comments or questions?
April, it turns out it wasn't Chris S. The display name was wrong, but April says, I love my commission.
Thank you, April.
Well, anything else that you want anyone to know?
Yeah, just come and see the show. The gallery is open.
Gallery is open. The show is up between now and April 10th, 2021. So there's plenty of time to come and see. We are open Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. and by appointment. So you are welcome to give me a call, shoot me an email, and we'll meet you. Come and see the work. Follow us on YouTube or subscribe, and follow us on Instagram at Judith Rinehart Gallery and at Lesley Frenz, and we'll keep you posted on all of the new exciting next steps.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.